Americans have a lot of opinions. One of those opinions is what town or city is the absolute worst in their home state. Sometimes that community is hated for good reason. Maybe it's a lack of opportunities, maybe it's a violent town, maybe it's just boring. In this series, we're taking a look at these towns and seeing what makes everyone hate them. In this video, we're going over the western United States. Spokane, Washington. Spokane is a fairly large city with 228,989 residents, according to the most recent data, so one would expect there to be more crimes reported, but on a per capita rate, they have too much. Crime rates are 90% above the Washington average and 145% above the national average, with 19 murders, 1,322 other violent crimes, and 11,514 property crimes reported. Spokane County has the second highest rate of violent crimes out of Washington's counties. One resident blamed the crime on a homelessness problem. According to the Spokane City government's website, they had 1,090 homeless individuals at last count. It certainly seems like there isn't much opportunity to get ahead in this city. The median household income is $12,000 below the national average at $52,600, and 16.5% of the population falls below the poverty line. That's because most of the jobs fall into the categories of healthcare at 18.8%, retail at 11.7%, and accommodations and food service at 9.17%. Another thing mentioned by Washington residents is that Spokane has an issue with racism due to a lack of diversity. The Census Bureau shows the population as being 80.6% white, so it is true that there isn't much diversity. According to an article in the Spokesman Review, Spokane has also been dealing with hate crimes. They reported 23 hate crimes in 2020. Then, in early 2021, a synagogue and its Holocaust memorial were defaced with red paint. That's enough for me to know that Spokane has issues. Salem, Oregon. Real estate prices are 24% lower than the Oregon average, so Salem has that going for it at least, assuming one is in a position to buy a home. As with Spokane, Salem is also experiencing a housing crisis that has resulted in a large number of residents being homeless. The last report has approximately 1,300 people as being unsheltered. That's out of a population of 175,535. The crime rate in Salem is 42% above the Oregon average and 78% above the national average, including 2 murders, 696 other violent crimes, and 6,698 property crimes. According to the Justice Department, that's partially due to ice methamphetamine being widely distributed and abused in this area. Salem is also a hub for people moving cocaine from California to Portland, so there has been an increase in that drug within the city as well. The residents of Salem also cite a lack of jobs outside of the state government. They say the wages are lower than they should be, and that's supported by the median household income being only $58,726 and the poverty rate of 15.3%. However, public administration is only the third largest industry in Salem. The top 2 spots go to healthcare and retail. As far as specialized jobs go, they have 4.55 times the usual number of people working in farming, fishing, and forestry occupations. Modesto, California. California is so big that the residents decided to split their state, so for northern folks, the worst city is Modesto. Crime rates are 24% higher than the California average, with violent crimes being 91% above the national average. Modesto is known for having one of the highest car theft rates in the country. They reported 1,603 violent crimes, including 16 murders, and 5,340 property crimes. That's with a population of 218,264. While the 3 largest industries in Modesto are healthcare, retail, and manufacturing, they also have a larger than average number of people working in the category of agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting. This is due to the presence of the E&J Gallo Winery, which employs approximately 5,000 people. Aside from the crime problem, people in California point to a growing homelessness problem in Modesto and the surrounding valley communities for why they don't like this area. Representative Josh Harder's website says that homelessness is the most common issue he hears about when traveling through the Central Valley, with almost 2,000 people being unsheltered in this area. However, the Modesto Bee says the counts are closer to 3,000. Another reason people list when asked why they don't like this area is the cost of living in comparison to what they receive. They say the city is boring and doesn't have much to offer, but the cost of living is 5% higher than the national average. Bakersfield, California. In Southern California, the residents voted Bakersfield as the worst, yet they inexplicably keep gaining in population. They went from 347,483 residents in 2010 to 403,455 in 2020. There are a few reasons why a person might want to reconsider moving to this area if they're thinking about it. Bakersfield has a problem with pollution, for one thing. In 2020, they were ranked number 1 for annual particle pollution, number 2 for 24-hour particle pollution, and number 3 for high ozone days out of hundreds of other metropolitan areas in the US. This is due to the petroleum industry. The area in and around Bakersfield produces 66% of all oil in the state of California. Bakersfield is also known for being a dangerous city. Their crime rates are 76% higher than the California average and 94% higher than the national average. They reported 2,007 violent crimes, including 44 murders, and 15,619 property crimes. That puts the chance of becoming a victim of a crime at 1 in 23. According to one resident, they've been known to find human body parts in area lakes, so that's terrifying. If you're expecting the police to be of assistance, you might be out of luck, because a DOJ investigation found that the police department had been violating the constitutional rights of Bakersfield residents by using unreasonable deadly force and conducting unnecessary arrests, searches, and other practices. In addition to that, Bakersfield has a homelessness crisis like the previous entries on this list, as well as a high poverty rate of 17.2%. Sparks, Nevada. The overall cost of living in Sparks is 3% higher than the Nevada average, but real estate prices are 9% higher. Residents have started complaining about newcomers buying up property and causing an increase in home prices. Then there's the crime. The violent crime rate is 8% above the national average, with 4 murders and 442 various other violent crimes reported for the last year on file. The residents of Sparks also have a lower likelihood of having a higher education than expected. In the US, 88.5% of adults have a high school education, and 32.9% have a 4-year degree. In Sparks, it's 85.5% for a diploma and 23.4% for a degree. Sparks does do better in the income and poverty category than the national averages, but I'm not sure how. The median household income is $67,187, and the poverty rate is 9.2%, which is surprising given that the largest industry in the city is retail, with healthcare and accommodation and food services rounding out the top 3 for the area. They have 108,445 residents as of the 2020 census. When surveyed, some of those residents mentioned noise pollution, traffic, and an increasing cost of living and a lack of good jobs for why they consider Sparks to be the worst town in their state. Mesa, Arizona. Between 2010 and 2020, the population in Mesa increased by 65,000 residents, so there have been plenty of people who thought this city was just fine. It does have some good stats. The crime rates are 18% below the Arizona average and 5% below the national average, so there's that. Thanks to the influx of new residents, construction is the 3rd largest industry, with healthcare and retail in the top 2 spots. The median household income is slightly below the national average at $61,640, but the poverty rate is 13.3%. One of the reasons given by residents for why Mesa is the worst place in Arizona is a distrust of the police. I found this review. It's a sad story that I won't get into because of the monetization rules on YouTube, but you can look it up and come to your own conclusions. The policing issues were mentioned by several different people. The other recurring theme is that there isn't anything to do unless you want to drive somewhere. Most reviews of Mesa refer to it as a family-oriented suburban area, meaning there's no nightlife, which I guess is important to some people. Provo, Utah. The citizens of Utah have 3 main complaints about the city of Provo, from what I can tell. First, those who aren't part of the Church of Latter-day Saints have a problem with the Mormons controlling most aspects of the city, including the culture. People who don't fit into that have said that they feel there is discrimination against them. Second, this is the location of Brigham Young University, and residents have an issue with so many students being in the city. They also don't like that almost a quarter of the jobs in this area are related to the university. If a resident doesn't want to work in education, the 2nd and 3rd largest industries are retail and healthcare. The 3rd reason residents cited for hating Provo is the bad drivers. Several mentioned left lane lurkers who don't understand that the left lane is meant for passing. Other than that, the only thing that stands out about Provo is the 25.8% poverty rate, but that's due to how the Census Bureau counts residency. They include students where they sleep, so this factors in all of the young people who either don't work or have part-time jobs when they're not in class. There isn't much crime in the area. The violent crime rate is 70% below the national average, so Provo is safer than 60% of US cities. Caldwell, Idaho. Caldwell isn't a huge city. It has a population of 59,996, but the people of Idaho hate this place. The crime rates in Caldwell are 53% higher than the Idaho average, but it's 12% below the national average. They didn't report any murders on the last FBI report. There were 203 violent crimes and 997 property crimes, so the chance of becoming a victim is 1 in 49. Another thing that loses points for Caldwell is the low wages and poverty in this area. The median household income is almost $10,000 below the national average at $55,069, and the poverty rate is 13.7%. They also have an unemployment rate that is 50% higher than the national average. Yet, housing is expensive. The current housing market starts at just a hair under $300,000 and goes up to $3.55 million. Most of the people can deal with all of that, though. The problem that they have is the presence of gangs. According to KTVB News, gang violence is on the rise. In 2019, they reported that a 14-year-old was injured in a drive-by. They say that the FBI had to form a violent crime and gang task force for the area to try to eliminate the issue. Browning, Montana. Browning is a little bit different from the other communities on this list. This town of fewer than 1,000 people sits on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation. If you know anything about American history, then you'll know that most reservations and the surrounding areas tend to have high crime and high poverty. Browning has an overall crime rate that's 62% higher than the Montana average, and the violent crime rate is 96% above the national average. There is a 1 in 24 chance of becoming a victim of a crime, and Browning is safer than only 6% of U.S. cities. The median household income is about half that of the national average at only $31,750, and 31.9% of the residents live below the poverty line. With high poverty comes a lot of health issues. Glacier County, where Browning sits, is the third highest for the state of Montana for adults with diabetes. They have the second highest rate of STIs, as well as the largest number of adult smokers at 33.6%. This area also struggles with alcohol issues, with them having the third highest rate of alcohol-impaired driving deaths at 73.1%, and the third highest rate of motor vehicle crash deaths at 46.9 per 100,000 people. This area is just depressing. Rock Springs, Wyoming. Rock Springs is infamous in the state of Wyoming thanks to its history. In 1885, there was a riot and massacre of more than 24 Chinese immigrant miners at the hands of white miners who thought that their jobs were being taken away from them. The grand jury refused to indict the men who were involved, and no one was ever held responsible. The New York Times compared Rock Springs to Sodom and Gomorrah. Things might not be quite so bad there anymore, but some say that the people in the area can be rude. Another reviewer said that Rock Springs has an air of stagnation about it, and nothing ever changes. Several survey respondents mentioned that Rock Springs is a mining community, so that's a large part of the job market, and they're not wrong. The category of mining, quarrying, and oil and gas extraction is the largest industry in this community, with 13.8% of the jobs. Because of that, the median household income for Rock Springs is considerably higher than the state or national averages at $74,625, and the poverty rate is 10.2%. The second and third largest industries are healthcare and education. The crime rate in Rock Springs is 13% lower than the Wyoming average and 31% lower than the national average. With a population of 23,526, they reported 58 violent crimes and 307 property crimes, so there is a 1 in 62 chance of becoming a victim of a crime. Pueblo, Colorado. The overall crime rate in Pueblo is 74% higher than the Colorado average, and the violent crime rate is an astounding 169% above the national average. They reported 1,181 violent crimes, including 16 murders, and 5,233 property crimes. Yet, somehow, this place is still attracting new people. Their population increased from 106,595 to 111,876 from the 2010 census to the 2020 census. It boggles the mind. There are so many other issues with this place that go beyond the crime. The job market also sucks, for one thing. 1 out of every 5 employees in Pueblo work in the healthcare field, with that being the largest industry at 20.4% of the jobs. That's followed by retail and accommodation and food services. However, the median household income is way below the state and national averages at only $42,902, and 21.8% of the residents live below the poverty line. People familiar with this city say that it's cheap, and it does have a lower than average cost of living, I'll give them that, but there are a million reasons for that. Here are a few of the reviews on what it's like living in Pueblo, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. There were many, many more that all said similar things about this place. Hobbs, New Mexico. I would have guessed that Albuquerque would have been voted the worst because they have an insane crime rate, but the people of New Mexico say that Hobbs is the city that they hate the most. The crime rate in Hobbs isn't much better, so there's that. The crime rate is 32% higher than the New Mexico average and 104% above the national average. For the last year of data on file, they reported 1 murder, 250 other violent crimes, and 1,579 property crimes. That puts Hobbs as being safer than only 7% of U.S. cities, and there is a 1 in 21 chance of becoming a victim. As for the economic climate, it could stand to be better. The median household income is below the national average at $57,646, and 19.1% of the residents fall below the poverty line. One reviewer said that the town's entire economy is dependent upon an oil field. That seems to be fairly accurate since mining, quarrying, and oil and gas extraction is the largest industry, with 18.2% of the jobs, which is 36.9 times the usual number for a population of 40,508. The second largest industry is retail at 10.6%, and the third largest is education at 9.07%. Another reviewer said that the oil industry is why there is so much crime in the area. They boiled it down to young men of questionable backgrounds coming to the area for work and causing problems. If you enjoyed this video, check out the others in this series. They're here on this end card, and I'll link them below. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, what are you waiting for? Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I remain stuck in the cornfield.